The opposite of inner peace. In the past, I've said that everything that we do, everything that we ultimately do, is because there's a part of us that ultimately believes that we would achieve inner peace if we had that, right? The part that wants to make a lot of money thinks that if you had a lot of money, you would be safe, and if you were safe and you could protect people or do the things that you wanted, when you did all of those things, you would have inner peace. Same thing for a part that wants to drink a lot of alcohol, right? It thinks that this will make you happy and it'll bring you closer to your friends. And by doing that, you'll have stronger relationships. And by doing that, you'll be more free to be yourself in other situations and you'll have inner peace, right? I'm just giving you examples, but at the end of the day, every action that we ultimately take is because a part of us believes that we'll have inner peace. And we might call it something else. We might call it happiness. We might call it authentic love or universal love or connection, whatever. But at the end, the full sensation is that ability to just breathe more easily, right? To have that inner peace. And that's ultimately what we want. So the question is, what blocks us from having that? Or in other words, what's the opposite of inner peace? Now, you might think the obvious answer is the opposite of inner peace is like outer war. You would think so, but that's not the case. Because some people can have inner peace while they're battling an outside war. Is it harder? Absolutely. But is it impossible? No. And therefore, if it's impossible, then it's not the opposite of inner peace. So then your next guess might be an inner battle, right? If it's not an outer war, you have an inner battle. And it's hard to have inner peace if you're having an inner battle, especially if that's a constant battle that you have with yourself. And that's actually closer, but still no, because you can have moments of inner peace in that struggle, right? When you've done the right thing and you've done this, you still might be battling, but when you've done that thing and you have that inner peace, then it's not the opposite of inner peace, but it's closer, definitely. So the opposite of inner peace, the fundamental thing that holds people back is the feeling or the belief that I can't handle this, or I won't be able to handle this, right? If you have that belief, if you have that thought in the moment, that is the opposite of inner peace. And it's the one thing that everything we fear comes down to, is that you won't be able to handle this, right? You lose your job or you're scared of losing your job. Why? Because you're scared that you won't be able to handle what happens after that. You're scared to feel an emotion or to think of a worst case scenario. And why? Because there's a part of you that feels like you won't be able to handle this. You won't recover. You won't be able to bounce back. So when we have inner peace, we have the belief that we'll be able to handle whatever life throws at us. This doesn't mean you'll always get what you want or that you'll handle it perfectly, but it does mean that you feel like you'll be able to handle whatever life throws at you. That is the quintessential aspect of inner peace, that you believe that you can handle what comes up. Which means the opposite is, I won't be able to handle it, or I can't handle this. And so what is it in this equation, right? Not being able to handle it can be the sensations in your body, the urges you have to do something and not being able to stop yourself, the emotions that you have, the sadness that might overwhelm you, the pain you will feel inside, the stories that might be activated that say that you're not good enough, that you're a failure, the letting down of someone you love, the potential shame and guilt that might come along with letting someone down that you love, the guilt and shame of letting yourself down, the guilt and shame that might be activated from something you did in your past, the potential loss of love, the abandonment of someone that you do love and they leave you, or the rejection of someone that you want love from and they just reject you. That can also just mean that you've disappointed someone you love, right? The ultimate fear of not being able to handle disappointing someone you love is that they might leave you or you might lose that love and you won't be able to handle that. Or it might be the concept that you have of yourself and not being able to be that picture that you have of yourself, and so you just ignore it or you downplay it. Or the concept of where you want to be and where others think you should be, right? And not knowing how to separate those differences. And you can't handle that, so you just do what other people want. So deep inside, and I'm not saying this is a logical thing or something that you've actually even ever thought, but if you take that down, the fear is you won't be able to handle it, right? Sometimes that fear is I might die. And other times it's like it'd be too overwhelming for me. But either way, you feel like you're not going to be able to handle or won't be able to handle what comes up. In the real world, how this looks are all the reasons, the logical reasons we have for not doing the things we want, or the lack of motivation that we have, or the lack of self-discipline. This is all the things that we complain about, but really, ultimately, under all of that is the fear that we won't be able to handle it. And the thing is, oftentimes, it's not the physical aspect that we're most scared of, right? We physically might be tired and we might be exhausted, but that's not what scares us. It's that we emotionally feel like we won't be able to handle it. We don't have the confidence or the trust in ourselves to be able to handle what life throws at us. So to me, surviving in the world requires your ego, right? The ego gets a bad rep, but really what the ego is are your stories. The ego are all the lessons you've learned from being alive, right? You have the innate things that you were born with, the drives, desires, all of that, your body type, your eye color, everything that's physically given to you, your baseline level of intelligence, and then you have your spiritual self, right? The part of you that gives you life that is separate from those innate things. But in the middle, what helps you survive in the world is your ego. And your ego has really only three main jobs. And its main job is that you feel safe, right? This is your comfort zone. But since your comfort zone was taught by the lessons that you learned oftentimes when you were younger, really what it's doing is keeping you there emotionally. So you can logically know that this thing would be better for you, but emotionally you're like, I can't handle that. And so this is your ego talking. And so again, the three main jobs of your ego are: one is to protect you. These are the parts that will get angry for you, right? Anger is just when boundaries have been crossed. This is your ego saying, I am not safe here, I need to do this. Or this is the part of you that makes you small, makes you want to go hide, or makes you want to run away from a situation, or disassociates you in the moment, right? It's like overwhelming, can't deal with this, I'm just going to take a step out here. And this is a part of you that's protecting you. This is especially true if you see a lot of things in the world as an emergency, right? And you might not notice that mentally, but if you learn things and you are activated and scared in situations where you shouldn't be, then this is your ego trying to protect you. In fact, most addictions are just the protective aspects of your ego taking over. And the reason it does that is because it feels like it can't do something. It can't handle something. This can be a person who was messed up from lessons they learned in childhood, right? Maybe they were physically assaulted or worse. And so when they feel a certain way, that fear takes over and this protective part takes over. And so instead of allowing you to feel that emotion that it feels like it can't handle, what it does is it turns on the TV, or it reaches for food, especially not the healthy food, or reaches for a drink, or scrolls on the phone so you don't have to feel that sensation. Or this is a person that only feels relaxed when they do a certain drug, right? This could be weed, this could be alcohol, this could be something harder. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Personally, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you do want to change that, you have to understand what it wants and give it what it wants. And that doesn't mean like in the real world it wants all these things, but it does mean understanding where it is in your body and really doing the movie of the mind exercise. And the second main aspect that your ego does is it manages your life. Your managers help you stay on track. Did you brush your teeth this morning? Did you eat? When's the last time you ate? When are you going to eat next, and what are you going to have? What time are you planning on going to bed? What time do you have to wake up tomorrow? All these things are your manager parts just doing the thing that it does so that you can survive in the world. And sometimes when managers don't do their job, it can be like a crazy scientist who gets lost in their work, right? Their managers are somewhere else because they are focused on something that they really enjoy. Or the opposite, right? Someone that can't get their time together or their life together, no matter what they try, because their protectors are doing everything to protect them, and their managers never get an opportunity to do the thing that will help them stay on track, because their protectors are always in emergency mode. And that leads us to the third thing that your ego does or experiences, and those are your raw emotions and your raw creativity. People often associate creativity in a positive way, which is good because it should be seen as a positive way. But creativity can also be used against you. It can create a hell for you if you only imagine the worst things that can happen. So oftentimes what happens is we feel a raw emotion, or we have this idea, this concept of what can go wrong, and it shoots it up to the managers, right? And so the manager's like, okay, I need to deal with this. And your manager's like, do we have enough time for this? Do we have enough money? And if so, what are we going to do? And if your managers feel overwhelmed or feel like it's not going to be able to handle this, if the emotion is too intense or the fear is too intense, if it's quote unquote too much, then what happens is it shoots it up to your protectors, and your protectors take over, and they're like, we'll burn everything down so that you don't have to feel this fear, and I don't care about how your normal life goes because my job is to protect you. Think of this as a literal firefighter, right? I had a friend tell me a story about how the apartment next to her burnt down. And what the firefighters did, they created holes in the ceiling, they tore through the windows, they made holes and water damage everywhere, because the protector, in order to protect the structure and to minimize damage, had to create that. And that's what your protector is doing. It doesn't worry about the secondary damage as long as it can protect what it needs to in the moment. And so if those protectors get activated often enough, that pattern of behavior gets embedded into you. And so what it's doing is it's allowing you to not have those fears or to not feel those emotions. And so that you don't feel those emotions or have those fears, but they're always underneath. And the example I like to use is Trump. Trump had an older brother who was an alcoholic, who basically killed himself with alcohol. He also had a piece of shit father and a mother who probably didn't know how to love him. Add that to the fact that his religion was founded by Norman Vincent Peale. And Norman Vincent Peale is the power of positive thinking. So Trump's older brother was supposed to take over for his father. But because of his brother's alcoholism, I could see Trump stepping into his father's role. So in order to earn love, Trump portrayed the same aspects and mindset that his father took with his brother, thinking he's weak, too weak to beat alcohol. You can't help someone if they're too weak, right? Especially family. And so this protector role of his acted like his father. He took on his father's mannerisms and beliefs. By doing so, he could judge other people harshly and never see his own faults. By doing so, he never has to deal with his fears. He never has to deal with his raw emotions. All because he's too scared or can't handle the deep-seated belief of any criticism. Because criticism for him means that he'll lose love from the only people that could protect him. And in this case, it's only him. Because to him, it will probably overwhelm him. So he's ready to destroy the world so that he never has to feel that pain. Because there's a part of him that feels absolutely he won't be able to handle it. And he will never actually say that, but you can see it in all of his actions. So I fucking hate the guy, but I can also understand him. I can have empathy for someone who lost a brother to alcoholism, who didn't know how to survive, whose older brother probably protected him from the worst of his parents' degradations. But since his brother couldn't handle that disapproval from his father, he turned to a substance to help him manage that because he couldn't handle those things from his parents. And then Trump learned from his father and his pastor, Norman Vincent Peale, that all negative thoughts should be banished. And this gave him the permission to both be an asshole like his father and to have the belief that any criticism of him was wrong, to just banish the thought of any negative thoughts. And he learned that's the best way to be safe in the world. He learned not to drink, to criticize others, and to not hear any criticism of himself. In other words, the perfect fucking formula for a manipulative narcissist. And to show you just how broken America is, 75 million people voted for him. And we want someone or something else to protect us. And we want to feel confident that they can handle whatever life were to throw at them. And so if someone is loud and they're aggressive, we feel confident that they can handle whatever life throws at them. Even if they are inherently wrong in all their concepts. If they believe that, and we believe that they can handle whatever life throws at them, then we're like, oh, this person has confidence, they have trust, they can handle whatever life throws at them. And we hand that power over to other people, to entertainment, to politicians, to our loved ones. Because the hardest, or better yet, the scariest thing that we can do is to feel those raw emotions, that creativity that works against us, which are our fears and to know that we can handle it because we haven't been taught the tools to be able to handle it. And oftentimes it's because we've never had inner peace, or it's been so long since we've had an inner peace that we're like, I don't know how to handle this. So if you don't believe it's possible to have inner peace, then why the hell would you want to feel your raw emotions? Why the hell would you want to experience your fears and feel that you can't handle it, right? You would do everything in your power to not feel those things. You would work with your managers, you would do the protectors, and you would find other people or places to be able to handle the things that you don't want to handle yourself. But if you did have that inner peace, if you were able to experience it on a regular basis, if you had the belief that you could handle anything that life were to throw at you, then how much easier would life be for you? What would change? What would change for you, and what would change for the people around you? What would you be doing differently? And if you can't imagine or think it's even possible, then it's probably been so long since you've had inner peace. And this is why I start with stories. Because even if you start with something small or medium-sized, a story that you have that you're able to change and you have that inner peace at the end of it, then what you're telling your subconscious is, oh, I can handle this. And if you do that often enough, if you build that trust in yourself on a consistent basis, then you can take on larger and larger things as life goes on. To have a felt sense inside of you, not a logical thing, but a felt sense, you feel it emotionally that you can handle whatever life were to throw at you, that is the foundation of all trust within yourself and all self-confidence. Doesn't mean that you'll be great at something or that you'll never make a mistake, but it simply means that you'll be able to handle those mistakes. You'll be able to make mistakes and bounce back and feel fine. To be able to improve, to be able to handle whatever life were to throw at you, right? Even in the most overwhelming of situations, if you had that trust within yourself, then everything else changes. And when you know that on a consistent basis, then self-confidence and trust within yourself becomes your new baseline. So this week starts and expands on your ability to handle your emotions. Because oftentimes we fear more than anything else our emotions. We fear our stories, our shortcomings, the things that we won't be able to handle are based on what we feel inside. And so this week we learn to sit with our emotions, with the full range of our emotions, our sensations, our urges, the stories that come up, our interpretations or the feelings, and the needs that are not being met. And we just sit with them. And by doing that, by understanding that you don't have to simply react, that you can choose in the moment. So if you have any questions or comments for me, please feel free to let me know.